The cold steel of the revolver pressed against his temple was a final, damning punctuation mark on a life of hollow victories. From his penthouse suite, the city lights blurred into a galaxy of silent judgment, each twinkling point of life a stark reminder of the darkness that had consumed his own. They called him the architect, a titan of industry who molded skylines from sheer will. Yet here he was, the sole inmate in a prison of his own design, a fortress of solitude so perfect, so impenetrable that it had become his tomb. His mind, once a blueprint for greatness, was now a labyrinth of despair, each thought a corridor leading to another dead end. The world saw a king on his throne, he saw a coward in a cage. As his finger tightened on the trigger, a single, rebellious thought ignited in the ruins of his self-worth. If he was the architect of this prison, could he not also be the architect of his escape? That question, more powerful than any bullet, was the first crack in the walls of his self-imposed confinement. It was the beginning of a journey not away from life, but deeper into it, a descent into the foundations of his own mind to discover the faulty blueprints that had led to his inner collapse. This is not just his story. It is a reflection of a struggle that lies dormant in us all. We are all architects of our own internal worlds. We construct walls to shield ourselves from pain, from fear, from the chaotic symphony of existence. But in our quest for safety, do we inadvertently build a prison? Do our fortresses of belief, of habit, of identity become the very cages that hold us captive? The man, whose name was Alistair, lowered the weapon, its weight a sudden, unbearable burden. The clatter of metal on marble was a discordant note in the funereal silence of his life, a sound that jolted him from the trance of his own despair. In the fractured reflection of a nearby mirror, he saw not a man at his end, but a project in ruins, a structure begging to be rebuilt. This was the moment the prisoner decided to become the architect once more, not of steel and glass, but of something far more enduring, a fortress of the mind. This journey from a mental prison to a mental fortress is the path of the Stoic. It is not a path of gentle slopes and pleasant vistas. It is a rugged, demanding ascent, a path that requires you to confront the very demons you have long sought to outrun. It demands that you take a sledgehammer to the walls of your own limiting beliefs, that you excavate the rubble of your past, and that you lay a new foundation on the bedrock of timeless wisdom. The Stoics, those ancient masters of the human spirit, knew that the world outside our control is a relentless storm. They knew that true power is not found in commanding the winds and the waves, but in building a vessel that can withstand their fury. A mind left to its own devices is a vessel adrift, tossed and turned by every passing squall. A mind disciplined, a mind fortified, is a galleon, its course steady, its sails full, its captain at the helm, ready for any tempest. The very first blueprint for this mental fortress is the principle known as the dichotomy of control. This is the cornerstone upon which all other Stoic wisdom rests. Epictetus, a man who endured the chains of slavery, taught that our world is divided into two distinct realms, that which is within our power and that which is not. In our power are our judgments, our impulses, our desires, and our aversions, the inner workings of our own minds. Beyond our power lies everything else, our bodies, our possessions, our reputations, the actions of others. The prison of the mind is constructed from the delusion that we can control the uncontrollable. We chain ourselves to outcomes we cannot guarantee. We shackle ourselves to the opinions of others. We live in constant fear of losing what was never truly ours to possess. Alistair was the very embodiment of this self-imposed slavery. His identity was a skyscraper built on the unstable ground of external validation. His worth was measured in stock prices, in media accolades, in the envy of his rivals. He had spent his life chasing phantoms, and in doing so had surrendered the one thing he could truly command, his own inner world. The market could turn against him, a business partner could betray him, a rumor could shatter his reputation overnight. These were the storms he could not control, and because his entire sense of self was built on this precarious foundation, he lived in a perpetual state of siege. To begin building your fortress, you must first draw a clear line in the sand of your own consciousness. You must distinguish, with ruthless clarity, between what is yours to command and what is not. This is not an act of surrender. It is an act of liberation. It is the realization that true strength lies not in bending the world to your will, but in mastering your response to the world as it is. When you cease to be a slave to the external, you become the sovereign of your internal kingdom. Imagine your mind as a garden. You cannot control the weather, the changing of the seasons, or the blights that may be carried on the wind. But you can control what you plant, how you fertilize the soil, and which weeds you pull. The prison of the mind is a garden left to the whims of nature, overgrown with the weeds of anxiety, resentment, and fear. The fortress of the mind is a garden cultivated with deliberate intention, a landscape where the seeds of wisdom, courage, and tranquility are nurtured, a place whose roots run so deep that it can weather any storm. Alistair began his work not with grandiose plans, but with the simple act of pulling weeds. He identified the pervasive weed of his need for approval, a parasitic growth that had choked the life out of his own authentic desires. He saw the thorny vine of his fear of failure, a plant that had ensnared him in a web of inaction and self-doubt. He recognized the insidious weed of his attachment to material wealth, a delusion that had blinded him to the true sources of joy and meaning. With each weed he pulled, a little more light entered his inner garden. It was arduous, painful work, but it was the necessary work of clearing the ground for a new and more resilient structure. This is the first task that awaits you. You must become a vigilant gardener of your own mind. You must find the courage to confront the weeds that have taken root within you, the limiting beliefs, the irrational fears, the self-destructive habits. You must be willing to do the hard, often painful work of uprooting them. This is the essential first step in building a mind that is a fortress, not a prison. The second blueprint is the practice of premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. In our modern culture, obsessed as it is with the relentless pursuit of positivity, this may sound like a recipe for depression. We are told to visualize success, to banish all negative thoughts, to live in a state of perpetual optimism. But the Stoics were realists. They understood that life is a tapestry woven with threads of both light and shadow. To ignore the darkness is to leave yourself vulnerable, to build a fortress with walls of sand. The premeditation of evils is not an invitation to wallow in despair. It is a training exercise for the soul. It is the practice of vividly imagining the worst-case scenarios, of mentally rehearsing the loss of everything you hold dear. The purpose of this seemingly grim exercise is to strip your fears of their power. When you have faced the abyss in the safety of your own mind, when you have walked through the fires of your greatest anxieties, you inoculate yourself against the shock of misfortune. You transform yourself from a fragile creature of circumstance into a resilient warrior, prepared for any eventuality. When the storms of life inevitably arrive, you will not be caught unprepared. You will have already faced them, and you will know that you possess the inner resources to endure. Alistair began to incorporate this practice into his daily life. He would sit in silence and imagine the collapse of his business empire, the loss of his fortune, the ruin of his reputation. He would visualize the decay of his own body, the departure of his loved ones, the finality of his own death. At first, these exercises were excruciating, plunging him back into the depths of his despair. But as he persisted, a profound shift began to occur. The fear that had held him captive for so long began to loosen its grip. He realized that even if he lost everything he had, he would still possess himself. He would still have his mind, his character, his power to choose his response. He began to understand that his true wealth was not in his bank accounts, but in the unassailable fortress of his own inner being. This is a practice that you can begin today. Take a few moments each morning to contemplate the impermanence of all things. Imagine the loss of your job, your home, your most cherished relationships. Do not dwell on the pain of these thoughts, but on the recognition of your own capacity for resilience. Ask yourself, if this were to happen, how would I respond? What strengths could I draw upon? This is not an exercise in morbid fantasy. It is an exercise in building mental and emotional armor. It is about transforming fear into a source of strength, about building a fortress that can withstand not only the storms of the external world, but the tempests of your own mind. The third blueprint is the concept of amor fati, the love of one's fate. This is perhaps the most challenging and the most transformative of all Stoic principles. It is the practice of not merely accepting your circumstances, but embracing them, loving them, and seeing them as an essential and beautiful part of your life's journey. It is the understanding that in the grand tapestry of existence, there are no accidents, no mistakes, no random acts of cruelty. Everything that happens, for good or for ill, is a part of your path, a part of your purpose. To resist what is, to rage against the immutable reality of your life, is to declare war on the universe itself, a war you are destined to lose. To love your fate is not to be a passive victim of circumstance. It is to become an active and willing participant in the unfolding of your own destiny. It is to see every obstacle as an opportunity for growth, every setback as a lesson in disguise, every wound as a source of wisdom. It is to say to the universe, "This is what you have given me. I will not only accept it, I will use it. I will transform it into something that serves my own evolution and the evolution of those around me." Alistair had spent his life fighting against his fate. He had fought against the limitations of his own mind. He had fought against the unpredictability of the market. He had fought against the relentless march of time. This perpetual state of conflict had left him exhausted and depleted, a hollow victory in a war against reality. The practice of amor fati was a revelation. It was a laying down of his arms, a surrender to the ineffable wisdom of life itself. He began to look back on his past, not with regret, but with a newfound sense of gratitude. He saw how his early struggles had forged his resilience, how his failures had taught him humility, how his moments of deepest despair had led him to this very moment of awakening. He began to see that the prison he had constructed for himself was not a punishment, but a catalyst, a necessary crucible for his own transformation. This is the ultimate alchemy of the Stoic warrior, the ability to transmute lead into gold, to transform pain into purpose, to find beauty in the very heart of the struggle. It is to look upon your life with all its imperfections and its scars, and to say, "Yes, this is my life, and I love it. I would not have it any other way." The path to this love of fate begins with the practice of gratitude. It begins with a conscious effort to find the good in every situation, no matter how challenging it may seem. It begins with the questions: what can I learn from this? How can this experience make me stronger? What opportunity is hidden within this adversity? It begins with a deep and abiding trust in the wisdom of the universe, a wisdom that often transcends our own limited understanding. It is a surrender to the dance of life, an allowing of yourself to be led by a force that is both within you and beyond you. The fourth blueprint for your fortress is the practice of memento mori, the remembrance of death. In a culture that worships youth and denies the reality of aging, death is the ultimate taboo. We live our lives as if we have an infinite number of tomorrows, squandering our precious and finite moments on trivialities, on petty grievances, on the endless pursuit of things that will ultimately turn to dust. The Stoics, however, saw death not as a terrifying end, but as a wise and trusted advisor. To remember that you are going to die is not to be morbid. It is to be fully and vibrantly alive. It is to be awakened to the preciousness of each and every moment. It is to be liberated from the tyranny of the trivial and to be focused on what truly matters. When you live with the awareness of your own mortality, your priorities are rearranged. The opinions of others lose their sting. The pursuit of fleeting pleasures seems a hollow and meaningless game. The accumulation of wealth becomes an absurdity. You begin to ask yourself the questions that lie at the heart of a life well lived. Am I living with purpose? Am I being true to my deepest values? Am I loving with all my heart? Am I making a positive difference in the world? Death is the ultimate deadline, the fire that burns away all that is non-essential, leaving only the pure gold of a life lived with meaning and intention. Alistair had been running from the thought of death his entire life. His empire was a monument to his own ego, a desperate and ultimately futile attempt to achieve a form of immortality. But in his relentless pursuit of a legacy, he had forgotten to live. The remembrance of death was a cold, invigorating shock to his system, a splash of icy water that woke him from his long and troubled slumber. He began to see the sacredness of each breath, the beauty in the ordinary, the preciousness of his own fleeting existence. He began to invest his time not in building more monuments to himself, but in building connections with others, in sharing his wisdom, in leaving a legacy of kindness and compassion. He came to understand that true immortality is not found in the structures we leave behind, but in the lives we touch. This is a practice that has the power to transform your own life. You need not dwell on the morbid details of your own demise. You simply need to carry the awareness of your own finitude with you, like a precious and secret jewel. Let it be a constant reminder to live each day as if it were your last. Let it be a catalyst for courage, for kindness, for authenticity. Let it be the force that propels you to create a life that is not a mere dress rehearsal, but a masterpiece. The fifth and final blueprint for your fortress is the cultivation of virtue. For the Stoics, virtue was the sole and ultimate good. Not wealth, not health, not fame, not even happiness itself. The only thing that truly matters is the quality of your own character. To be virtuous is to live in accordance with reason, to act with wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. It is to be a good person, not for the rewards it may bring, but simply because it is the right thing to do. It is to build a character that is as solid and unshakable as a fortress, a character that cannot be compromised by the temptations of the world or the turmoil of your own emotions. Our modern world often scoffs at the very idea of virtue. We live in a culture that values success over integrity, that celebrates notoriety over character. We are taught to ask, "What's in it for me?" rather than, "What is the right thing to do?" But the Stoics knew that a life devoid of virtue is a life without a foundation. It is a house built on sand, destined to crumble at the first sign of a storm. A life of virtue, on the other hand, is a fortress built on bedrock. It is a life of inner peace, of self-respect, of unshakable integrity. Alistair had lived a life that was a moral vacuum. He had been driven by greed, by ego, by a desperate need to prove his own worth. He had been ruthless in his business dealings, dismissive in his relationships, and neglectful of his own soul. The pursuit of virtue was a radical reorientation of his entire being. It was a shift from a life of taking to a life of giving, from a life of self-aggrandizement to a life of service. He began to ask himself not, "What can I get?" but "What can I give?" He began to treat others with kindness and respect, not as a business strategy, but as an expression of his own evolving character. He began to cultivate the virtues of courage, of justice, of wisdom, and of temperance in his own daily life. And as he did, he began to experience a sense of wholeness, of integrity, of inner peace that all his worldly success had never been able to provide. This is the ultimate aim of the Stoic path. It is not to become unfeeling or detached from the world. It is to become a person of exceptional character, a force for good in the world, a life that is a testament to the power of virtue. This is not an easy path. It requires constant self-examination, a willingness to challenge your own biases, and a commitment to holding yourself to the highest possible standard. But it is a path that leads to the only kind of success that truly matters, the success of a life well lived. These 5 blueprints, the dichotomy of control, the premeditation of evils, the love of fate, the remembrance of death, and the cultivation of virtue, are the foundational principles for building a mind that is a fortress, not a prison. They are not abstract philosophical concepts to be debated in an academic seminar. They are practical tools, weapons in the arsenal of the Stoic warrior. They are the keys that can unlock the prison of your own mind and set you free. But knowing the blueprints is not enough. You must become the architect. You must pick up the tools and begin the work. You must be willing to get your hands dirty, to sweat, to bleed, to face the discomfort that is an inevitable part of all meaningful growth. This is not a journey for the passive spectator. It is a journey for the active participant, for the warrior who is willing to do battle with their own inner demons, for the architect who is willing to tear down the old and build something new in its place. The journey will not be a straight line. There will be days when you feel the walls of your fortress rising, strong and true, and there will be days when you feel as though you are back where you started, the prison of your own mind more inescapable than ever. This is the nature of the work. It is a spiral, not a direct ascent. The key is to keep going, to keep practicing, to keep putting one foot in front of the other, even when the path ahead is shrouded in fog. Alistair's journey was not without its setbacks. There were times when he fell back into his old patterns of thinking, when the ghosts of his past rose up to haunt him. But he did not give up. He had found something worth fighting for, something more precious than all his worldly possessions, his own inner freedom. He had found the path of the Stoic warrior, the path of the architect of the unconquerable mind. And so, the question that confronts you now is not whether you are capable of building this fortress, but whether you are willing. Are you willing to do the hard work of self-examination? Are you willing to face your fears, to embrace your fate, to live with the awareness of your own mortality, and to cultivate a character of unshakable integrity? Are you willing to become the architect of your own soul? The choice is yours. You can remain a prisoner in the cell of your own making, a slave to your own untamed thoughts and emotions. Or you can pick up the tools that have been laid before you and begin the work of building a mind that is a fortress, a sanctuary, a source of unshakable strength and inner peace. The path is clear. The blueprints are in your hands. The time to begin is now. Do not wait for a crisis to be your catalyst. Do not wait until you are standing on the brink of your own despair. Begin today. Begin with a single thought, a single choice, a single action. Begin by drawing a line in the sand between what you can control and what you cannot. Begin by imagining the worst and realizing that you have the strength to endure it. Begin by embracing your fate and finding the opportunity in every obstacle. Begin by remembering that you are going to die and living a life that is a testament to that precious truth. Begin by choosing virtue over vice, character over comfort, integrity over accolades. Become the architect of your own liberation. Build a mind that is not a prison but a fortress. A fortress that will not only protect you from the storms of life but will also serve as a beacon of light for others, a testament to the power of the human spirit to overcome any obstacle, to transform any pain, to build a life of meaning, of purpose, of unshakable joy. Your fortress awaits. The first stone is yours to lay. What will you build? Will you continue to reinforce the walls of your prison, or will you begin the sacred work of constructing a fortress for your soul? The choice, as always, is yours. Choose wisely, for in the architecture of your own mind you are both the prisoner and the key. You are both the ruin and the architect. You are both the captive and the liberator. Choose freedom. Choose strength. Choose to build a mind that is a fortress. And when you have built this fortress, you will discover that you are not alone. You are part of a long and noble lineage of Stoic warriors, of men and women who have walked this path before you, who have faced the same struggles and fought the same battles. You are part of a community of like-minded souls, a brotherhood and sisterhood of those who are committed to living a life of virtue, wisdom, and courage. So I invite you to join us. Share your own journey in the comments below. Tell us about the prison you are trying to escape, the fortress you are trying to build. Your story has the power to inspire others, to give them hope, to remind them that they are not alone. And in turn, their stories will inspire you, will strengthen you, and will remind you that you are part of something larger than yourself. And if you are ready to continue this journey, to delve deeper into the wisdom of the Stoics, and to forge your own unconquerable mind, then be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. For our next conversation will take us even further down this path, and will provide you with even more tools, more strategies, and more blueprints for building a life of meaning and of power. The journey is long, but you do not have to walk it alone. We are here with you every step of the way. We are your fellow architects, your fellow warriors, your fellow prisoners fighting for our own freedom. Together, we can build a world of fortresses, a world of unconquerable souls. Until next time, stay strong, stay stoic, and continue to build. Your masterpiece awaits.